and we'll call for the sediment and apologies. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. As a reminder, this morning's meeting will be recorded and will be subject to delayed broadcast on the Council's website. In terms of the swearing, if you hear your name, can you confirm your attendance, please? Councillor Maitland? Here. Provost Todd?
Oh, apologies.
Apologies. Councillor Friel?
I'm here, thank you.
Councillor Cowan?
Here.
Councillor Mackay?
Present.
Councillor Barton?
Yeah.
Councillor Holland?
Here, thanks.
Councillor Lennox?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. We have an apology this morning from Councillor Crawford. Councillor Watts?
Presently.
Thank you. We also have an apology from Councillor Filson as well as Councillor Hogg. Councillor Stewart? And I'll call again for Provost Todd.
Good lad.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, on to the second item on the agenda, and it's the planning application number 22/0009/S36 VAM. And it's submission for approval in relation to condition number 28, decommissioning, restoration and aftercare strategy, planning consent 20/0001/S36 VAR at Enoch Hill. Oh, hold on a second. At Enoch Hill Wind Farm B741 from Armour Wine to U720. And that's Dalrickett, Dalmellington, East Ayrshire, and that's on page 3. And I forgot to ask if there was any declarations. No, thank you very much. Okay, so.
Chair, just before Graham comes in to address members on the detail, just a couple of introductory remarks. Firstly, apologies, it's such a short agenda and hopefully it won't be too long. Members will recall I've raised before the previous action taken by the Council in 2013 round the open cast scenario, as we like to call it, included various actions looking at the previous governance around the management of the open cast applications and developments over their life. Changes were made at that time in line of the McKinnon review that was presented to Council around about August, I think it was, 2013, and we've still got the scars on my back from that. One of the changes that was made was to revisit the scheme of delegation and lift up to committee decisions such as this on the discharge of conditions. So this isn't about determining applications. Obviously, Enoch Hill's been consented some time ago. You then get a wide range of conditions in these big complex developments, and a number of those conditions required to be discharged prior to commencement of the development and them actually constructing and putting the turbines in, etc. In that regard, I've indicated to the Chair, and I think we've had discussions here at committee, that the intention will be to bring a paper sooner rather than later to the committee, and then with committee's approval, put that up to Council and invite Council to revisit the scheme of DELs and give back those delegated powers to officers, at least in relation to wind farms, because the original corrective action was in relation to open cast, and then over time, we've looked at it and said, well, we'll apply that to the wind farms, but we're now in a situation where we need to come to committee for matters such as the discharge of a bond. So that's the first point. I'll come back to that. The second point is we circulated an addendum, so it's just to give the context to that. We knew we had the report coming in Enoch Hill for the discharge of the condition on the CTMP, the Construction Traffic Management Plan, and that was the primary report that we issued for Enoch Hill. In the course of this week, the developer came and advised that in terms of the addendum report, which relates to another condition, which is the discharge of the requirement for a bond, then what they pointed out was the way that condition's worded, and they're not all quite the same yet because sometimes it's on appeal and the reporter might tinker with it or whatever. But the bottom line is, as the developer presented this week and said, look, by the time we are able to physically give you the bond, which in terms of the condition referred to in the addendum will be, that's when we can discharge that part of the condition. I have the bond in the value that the Council requires, in the form of words the Council requires, and from a provider the Council requires. So in practice then, or in, you know, that what that means is that they come with a bond at Enoch Hill, and I'd need to come back to this committee to say to you, it's the right value, it's the right style, and it's a recognised provider. Please give me authority to basically discharge that condition to allow them to start. In the context of Enoch Hill, what they advised this week was that if we go through that process, then bottom line is by the time they're able to start on site with the construction, then it will be August, and ARA have already said they already have a different developer on a different development ready to do works in the same bit of road, and therefore you can't have two at the same time, and therefore for Enoch Hill they would either need to be delayed, which then has a knock-on effect on the commercial side of things, or they would need basically to look at a soft start, which is they do the works to form the entrance to what's going to be their construction site at their risk. And if they never get all the conditions discharged, remember they've got their consent, but if they never get all the conditions discharged or for any other reason don't proceed, then they would have to redo or undo what they've done at their risk by way of a soft start. Soft start's not a particular problem for us because it's at their risk, and it would be framed in a way that there's an enforceable obligation to reinstate if they don't go ahead for any other reason and make good. We have done a soft start at North Kyle for the same reasons, because these are hundreds of millions of pounds deals. There's lots going on in the city that affect all the funding of these, and there are a lot of other pieces of the jigsaw, of which, although it feels a massive rigmarole in the planning side, the planning part is just still one piece of a much bigger jigsaw. So the position we've said to the developers at Enoch Hill is given there's precedent for a soft start and it's your risk, we're not averse to that. But the purpose of the addendum is to invite committee to deal with the report and discharge, if you're minded, the CTMP condition that Graham will address you on. But what I'm also asking you to do, as we did previously with North Kyle, is to consider granting delegated authority to me, which would be subject to them delivering the bond in the value that we require, in the style we require, and from an approved provider per our May 13 policy. And I would only issue the discharge if we're happy with the bond. But if you delegate to me, then when the bond comes in, I don't need to come back to committee and take weeks. I can issue the discharge on the same day, and they don't need a soft start. And the thing about the soft start is, well, it's perfectly appropriate, you know, proportionately. We have had some blowback or some feedback, some negative response from at least one resident in the area who's quite vocal about such matters. And I'd rather avoid an unnecessary further soft start if there's a better solution, which would be the ability to grant the discharge on receipt of the bond. So I'm kind of asking for committee to delegate back in anticipation we'll get the bond. It'll be, as I say, meeting our requirements, and that's the purpose of the addendum. It's to avoid that knock-on effect or having to come and call a special planning to do one discharge or one condition. And as I said, the bigger fix will be to bring a paper that sets all of that out in a bit more detail and seek agreement from the committee as a starting point to then refer up to council to reverse the previous change to the scheme of deals. And as far as council's happy, to then delegate back to officers a lot of this more detailed work and activity around the discharge of very detailed conditions. I'm not looking to delegate anything in relation to determination applications. Those arrangements are fine and fit for purpose, but I'm looking in the future. But in the meantime, we have to work within the arrangements that are currently in place, and it's just a bit cumbersome bringing technical details, discharge of condition reports to committee when in 99 cases out of 100 there is no option or decision to be taken but to agree the discharge because all the requirements are met. So nobody questions the reasons the action was taken, either in relation to the open cast or by extension the wind farms, but we've moved on in the last 10 years and the paper will set out why I think it's safe enough now for council to revisit that matter. But in the meantime, that's just to explain why, one, we had to call the meeting, albeit it's quite light, there's no hearings or applications, and two, why there's an addendum in relation to Enoch Hill. So effectively I'm asking you to take that now as two reports in one, and we'll, you know, if you're happy, make each decision on each condition and then we'll record it appropriately. But all I'm trying to do is make it work and give the developer comfort that they won't need to wait a month on submission of the bond to get it discharged and get started in site. We can reduce that to an afternoon. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, David. Councillor Mackay, do you want to come in there?
Yes, thank you very much.
Maureen, I don't know if you can hear us. I think it's your poor wee connection again. Are you still there?
So sorry, I think we had this. There must be some problem with the link. Why is it then that thinking that you have just explained to us is not set out in the addendum itself or in the papers? Is that merely because it's not a specific planning matter and that's how the papers have to be reflected? That's all. But I mean,
No.
I'm happy in principle to support your ask.
Well, no, what I'm saying, Councillor Mackay, is I will be bringing a paper to the planning committee that would set out the whole of the bigger ask in terms, because that needs this committee to agree that, and then that minute would go up to council as I see paragraphs. So any decisions around changing the scheme of DELs, I'm just previewing. That'll come later, and I'll bring a paper here that sets out all of that. The addendum simply focuses on the additional ask in relation to Enoch Hill, and we only got notice of that, I think it was either Tuesday afternoon or Wednesday morning, and to be fair to Graham produced the addendum within a matter of hours to get it out and give members advance notice. So I asked them just to keep the addendum to the specifics of what the additional ask is on Enoch Hill, and the rest of it is context, and I will be bringing a paper to the committee to set out all of the bigger context that I set out this morning, if that helps.
Councillor Mackay, you quite happy with that?
Sorry, yes, thank you. That's grand, thanks.
Thanks, Maureen. I think it's a good point. Graham.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Obviously, as set out, this is an application for the approval of matters specified in conditions relating to Condition 28 of Deemed Planning Consent 20/0001/S36VAR, which is for the Enoch Hill Section 36 wind farm, as varied. And this is located off the B741 west of Delegals. Under the Council scheme of delegation, committee approval is required by a condition imposed on a grant of planning permission to address conditions relating to the restoration and aftercare of sites. Condition 28 requires a submission of an outlined decommissioning, restoration and aftercare strategy for the written approval of the Planning Authority. The condition itself sets out the various matters and details to be included in the decommissioning, restoration and aftercare strategy. After various revisions to address comments from the Council's consultants, Ironside Farrer, and the Planning Authority itself, the final version of the Decommissioning, Restoration and Aftercare Strategy was submitted on the 5th of May 2023. The strategy sets out the various actions to be undertaken to decommission the development and restore the site. Outline proposals include the removal of turbines and their foundations to a depth of 1 metre, removal of control buildings and associated compounds, and the breaking up of tracks, hard standings, and these will be soiled over and seeded to ensure that vegetation takes place. With regards to sections of floating track on top of deep peat, these will be removed in full upon decommissioning to avoid any long-term damage on the peatland beneath. There may be some retention of some sections of tracks for use by the landowner, but this will be based on the agreement of the planning authority if evidence to be justified. An environmental clerk of works will be employed throughout the decommissioning and restoration and aftercare periods to ensure the works are done correctly and in line with relevant environmental provisions. Fully detailed surveys and management plans, such as a pollution prevention plan and waste management plan, amongst others, will be submitted for the Planning Authority's approval as part of the detailed decommissioning and restoration plan. And 5 years of aftercare will take place, including peatland habitat improvements. The decommissioning and restoration is anticipated to take approximately 8 months, with the 5-year aftercare period taking place upon restoration of the site. The decommissioning, restoration and aftercare strategy will be reviewed every 3 to 5 years to ensure it is up to date and will inform the review of the financial guarantee. A final detailed decommissioning, restoration and aftercare plan, which will be informed by this outline, will be submitted for the approval of the Planning Authority at the relevant time in accordance with Condition 29 of the consent. Condition 28 of the deemed planning consent requires a decommissioning, restoration and aftercare strategy which addresses the matters set out in the condition. Having reviewed the submitted strategy and for the reasons set out in the report, it is recommended that the application be approved. And then if I can turn again quickly to the addendum, as David's already set out the detail of that one. And the recommendation is set out in paragraph 2. And it's recommended that the Planning Committee approve condition 30 part 1 under delegation by the Planning Committee on submission of the bond by the applicant on the condition that the bond is satisfactory in terms of risk, details and the quantum matches that assessed by the Council's independent consultants, Ironside Farah Limited. And that's obviously in relation to condition 30 part 1 for the financial guarantee. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham, and thank you for the addendum as well. So, members, the recommendations are on page 3, paragraph 2. Do we have any questions? Rob's Todd.
Thanks, Convener. Thanks, Graham. Just for my own comfort, when we went up the site visit, and it was really, really good to see some of the work going on. But I noticed in the base where the shaft mast was going to get bolted onto, there's a lot of work done in the bases where I don't know if there's any heavy metals, if there was any oils used in place, but I maybe picked you up wrong, and it's not your fault, it's mine. If there were any restoration, which hopefully there's not going to be for a long, long time, did you say that they're just going to fill in after they take the mast staff away? They're just going to fill in. Has any checks been done, or if there's any heavy metals or liquids at the base? Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. Yeah, in terms of the actual turbines themselves, they'll be removed in full, along with all parts of those down to a depth of 1 metre. So if there's any metals, etc., they'll be removed, and alongside any fluids and oils, etc., that are in the turbine, they'll be drained before they start to remove them. So they'll come out, and then obviously once they excavate basically all the foundations to that 1 metre depth, it's then on top of that they'll put soils. But in terms of anything down to that depth, it'll be removed in full, including any oils or anything like that.
Thanks for clarification. Any more questions? Okay, can we agree the recommendations or otherwise?
Agreed.
Agreed, thank you. Do I need to propose a second, or is that? No, we're all agreed. It's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, on to the last item. Agenda item number 3, which is planning application number 22/0033/S36BAM. Oops, pause for our microphone now. Application for section 36, variation approval of matters specified in conditions in relation to condition number 39, that's point 1, financial guarantee of planning consent 22/0002/S36VR, and that's at land within the North Kyle Forest, approximately 5.5 kilometres east of Patna, 6 kilometres west of Cumnock, and 2.5 kilometres northeast of Dalmellington, and that begins in pages 12. And Graham, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this application relates to condition 39 part 1, which is the financial guarantee for the deemed planning consent of 22/0002/S36VAR for North Kyle Wind Farm. The planning service consulted with its consultants, Ironside Farah Limited, who advised us in respect of the costs required to undertake decommissioning, restoration and aftercare on the site. The planning service required a financial guarantee quantum of £8,888,319 to ensure site restoration should the operator fail to do so. The applicant has agreed with this figure. The applicant proposes to provide the financial guarantee by way of a bond, which is of medium risk to the council, and both the Chief Governance Officer and Head of Finance have confirmed the risk is acceptable, as is the quantum of the financial guarantee, given it reflects the values assessed by Ironside Farah. Therefore, in terms of the requirements of condition 39 part 1, the applicant is to provide, prior to the commencement of development, details of the bond or other financial guarantee to cover the costs of decommissioning, restoration and aftercare of the site. We have been provided with details as to the value of the financial guarantee, which is acceptable to the council. We also know the financial guarantee will be a bond, which is also of acceptable risk to the council, and the bond provider will be NatWest. In this case, as there are two landowners, each wishing to share the bond with the council, 2 separate bonds will be provided, which in total will equal the bond amount of £8,888,319. As required under Part 2 of Condition 39, the applicant will require to deliver to the council the bond, and the planning authority will require to confirm in writing that that is satisfactory, but at this point in time the bond has not been delivered. Ordinarily, under the council scheme of delegation, the member's approval would also be required in respect of Part 2 of Condition 39, as it relates to a condition relative to the requirements for a financial guarantee to be provided to secure the decommissioning, restoration and aftercare of the development. As detailed in the report and the recommendations, members are also being asked at this time to agree to allow for the approval of Part 2 of Condition 39 under delegated powers upon submission of the signed bond by the applicant, provided that it is in the form and to specification as approved under Part 1. Therefore, in terms of the requirements of Condition 39 Part 1, and for the reasons set out in the report, it is recommended that the application be approved, and it is also requested that members also agree to allow for the approval of Condition 39 Part 2 under delegated powers upon receipt by the council of the bond, provided that such approval is in line with what has been presented under Part 1 of the condition. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Graham. Does anybody have any questions? No, quite straightforward. Can we look at the recommendations then? Page 12, have we agreed? Okay, that looks like a full agreement. So thank you very much. Thank you. And thank you. That's our business this morning complete.